Welcome to Desiderius Ripple podcast. In this season, we are diving into learnings from the Leadership for Green Transition, a training where we explore sustainability beyond environmental lens and as something deeply connected to how we lead, communicate, make decisions, and sustain youth organizations over time. Today, we are excited to have Krzysztof and Radosław with us, joining us from Poland. Krzysztof has worked in the cultural sector since the beginning of his career. Over the past 5 years, he has served as an accountant and head of the accounting department, where he was responsible for budgeting and coordinating revenues and expenditures in an organization of 150 employees. He's currently working at the Łódzki Dom Kultury, where he's primarily responsible for developing national projects related to youth, as well as initiatives carried out in international cooperation. He's also in the process of submitting a proposal titled Very Young Culture, focused on a 3-year process of diagnosis, participation, active youth engagement, and intergenerational knowledge exchange. And this is something that we're going to be surely asking you more to tell us about this project, because we are very excited to hear about this engagement of yours. And Radosław has been working in culture at the Łódzki Dom Kultury for 10 years, where he's primarily responsible for managing the website Region of Culture and Facebook page. On this site, he publishes cultural offerings of their region. He has also worked in many places before the Łódzki Dom Kultury, but in this place, he feels most at home because he's passionate about the work that he's doing. He leads tour guiding and creative events for the citizens of Łódź Voivodeship, and in his free time, he documents his city through photography.
Wow, such amazing description and introduction into this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. And so the first question, let's get back to the training that we went in ZADA Leadership for Green Transition. So question to both of you, what was the one idea from the training that stayed with you?
So I will start, and frankly speaking, one idea from the training that really stayed with me relates to the concept of leadership and how it changes in evolving circumstances. I clearly remember one exercise where we started in the small groups. In those smaller teams, ideas emerge quickly and quite naturally. When the first groups merge into larger ones, communication still flows smoothly because we collectively agreed that our ideas were aligned and could form a coherent whole. However, after the next merger to the biggest groups, and even more people and even more personalities joined, the dynamic shifted and kind of competency conflict appeared between our leaders. We have 2 captains in the smaller teams, and they have fight about what we need to do about our exercise that time. And for me, that was powerful lesson. In reality, where the only constant both in private and professional life is a change, everything change, and our role as leaders must also evolve. Leadership is not a fixed position, it shifts depending on the context of the group dynamics and shared goals. And that's what I think.
Thank you so much for reminding us with this answer of what actually happened in ZADA. Yeah, because it was a lot about, leadership flexibility and adapting to situations. Okay, Radek, we are anxious to hear from you.
I am also interested than the sustainability leadership. My main task, as I remember from ZADA, is there's with you, Branko, with you creating 4 groups with the coaching, coaches, captains. Yeah. I after this task, and when I come back to Poland, I think about this more than in with you, and I think I'm changed the way I see my role in the leadership context. before coming to you, I think there is more like a conceiver, I think. And now I see myself like a visionary and leader. Maybe I don't show you in the classes in Zadar, but I am some kind of, I see a lot and I remember a lot and think a lot, but I speak only if I have something to say. This is my main thing I learned in this
on the train.
Thank you, Radek, so much for this. I think one of the Han and I have experienced this so many times. One of the most important part also from intensive trainings like this is that there's a lot of things going on, a lot of information, and then you need to some time to digest all the things. And a lot of the lessons actually come days or weeks after the training when you come back home and when you have time to reflect and what's going on. So thank you for also highlighting this. And also connecting with what you said, can you speak a little bit more how you see now your own leadership role? So Radek, you mentioned a little bit about visionary leadership, so something like a conceiver, what we talked about. So can you share a little bit more about that?
I think now kind of more brave in the context of leadership. We have a training inside our job. Have a training a few days ago and about our brand and something like go in my group as a leader and starting to brave stand as a leader of my group. I think decision making now I focus on the main decisions who put an influence on the other decisions, and I focus on the first main task and treat myself like a leader in the decision and take the responsibility for.
And Krzysztof, what about you? How do you see your own leadership role now?
Just like I said earlier, I want to say it's my leadership style is not fixed one. I think it's evolving in time. It's flexibility. And it's important aspect of my own leadership role because ability to adapt my leadership style to what is needed. Sometimes leadership means stepping forward, giving direction, and other times it means it's stepping back. And I think my own leadership role is kind of changing when situation need for me kind of style leadership. But I personally I thought before the training I was a coach, like something like that. Never, or rather, I was captain, but I prefer the coach. But now I think it's depends of the situation.
Thank you for sharing. And also thank you for reminding us, and I think also to our listeners that it's also a valid action for leaders to step back sometimes, which I think often might be forgotten, or probably it might be seen as a sign of weakness even sometimes. For leaders to do that.
You know what it reminds me of? There are like these wolf packs, and when they travel in the packs, the alpha male or the leader is always in the back. So this kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you for sharing this. And also something that we would like to dive deeper in this episode are your individual experiences. I mean, we mentioned there is in your introductions, there is a lot of richness and diversity, even though you are both engaged in a cultural sector. So maybe we can start with Krzysztof. I mentioned that you're working on a project and preparing the project called Very Young Culture. Can you tell us more about it?
Okay, yesterday we sent this project to the Minister of the Culture, and we waiting for the result if they give us money for this project, and let's hope we will get this money. And I wrote about this project because this is kind of a long story, because Very Young Culture is a multi-year project responding to the need of systematically strengthen cultural education for young people in the Łódzkie region, voivodeship. It aims to build lasting collaboration between cultural institutions, schools, NGOs, and local leaders and facilitators. The initial diagnosis showed that unequal access to the cultural and educational opportunities for young people, especially in smaller towns, rural areas, as well as the risk of the cultural and digital exclusion. The project is structured in the three phases. The first phase focuses on identifying needs in youth, cultural education, and mapping local resources. The second phase concentrates on the networking activities and training for cultural workers, improving the quality and accessibility of cultural offerings for young people. The third phase aims to establish and consolidate local partnerships and proven models of collaboration. And key element is a grant program supporting grassroots educational and animation initiatives implemented jointly by different stakeholders for the young people.
Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to ask you sort of like a follow-up question, because you mentioned, that, first of all, it's a multi-year project, but you also mentioned a few phases, which, from what I hear is going to take a lot of work, and sort of also, it sounds like you put a lot of conscious thinking and into designing this. I want to ask you, based on this experience, particularly as a person who was behind the writing and conceptualizing the project, why do you think long-term thinking important in youth work and in this kind of projects?
I think it's about sustainability in long term, and with this diagnosis and deepening of this process, and educate young workers and young people. We can improve that educate level of young people in the future, because when you have diagnosis now, you can will know how to work in the future, and that work in the future will give these people opportunities and tools to work in our environment and our labor market.
Yeah, labor market. Yeah.
The market in our world circumstances.
Yeah, I think one of the things about long-term thinking and long-term planning is that it's very much connected, with the culture. How do we actually develop a culture or change the culture? Maybe something that we are doing now is not sustainable and we want to change it. We need time for this. We need time for when we talk about, culture as a field of what two of you are working. We need to change the culture of young people, how they look on culture and how culture is actually important.
Or culturing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all to do with the culture, but just it's a little bit of a word twister.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Radek, I want to ask you, as Branka mentioned, like both of you are immersed in the field of culture, and you're also working in a quite unique position of, on one side you are developing sort of like a media, a space for people to engage with culture, but you're also working very much hands-on, organizing tour guides and sort of making more visibility and showing the city and also the region to others and to the locals as well. My question would be, what does leadership look like in your daily work?
In my work, some kind of leadership is not a good word, I think, because I work in the two-person team, and I've something like I am a leader for myself right now, because other person is something like collaborator. Sorry, other person is something like collaborator, and I must give something like put the bar higher for myself, because I want to grow up as a person in my work, and I must put some task before me, to because nobody do this job for me. I must raise the bar for myself to engage more in my work, and that's why I'm leader for myself right now. Other person in my team is something like help to do what I vision in, but not. Maybe I may be a leader for the other person, and I think I am right now.
But I would add, this is where actually leadership starts. If you can support yourself, then you can show up, and if you can show up for yourself, you can definitely support others, or at least go in the direction. And this is where leadership starts from within, lead from inside out, as was the name of one of our projects back in the day. But let me stop talking.
No, I agree with you. And I think, Radek, you also put it in a quite elaborated manner, in a way that you started by saying, I'm not sure if I'm leader, but then you showed your leadership actually on different levels. One way is actually leading your own work and making sure, that probably you create a better quality outputs, when you decide that you have to show up for yourself, as Branko said, as a leader. But also, as you said, you're raising a bar for a person who works with you, and sort of also setting the example of type of the work and also the culture that you want to have, even if your team is as small as 2 people. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing this, and also for your reflections. And I do love that our guests use the vocabulary of the training, especially from the leadership, conceiver, collaborator, which probably will have to explain in the notes of the podcast what all of these types mean. And another question that I would like to ask for you, because you have such an extensive experience in a cultural field, and from this experience, what do you think is the biggest challenge in keeping young people engaged in cultural projects, maybe particularly in your region, or you might also want to reflect in general?
I think the biggest challenge for me is of overstimulating of the young people, because we have at times of social media, internet connection in the real world, and the young people is overstimulate in these times, and keep their attention is the biggest challenge in my tour guide, for example, because I must be something like very focused on this to keep the attention on the high level. Because if the attention will be lower, they are starting to not listen what I have to say in this kind of tour guides who I have. And I think the fighting with the overstimulating is the biggest challenge for right now, for this.
I think it's quite, for me particularly, it's curious that, you are reflecting on your professional setting, which is, organizing tour guides, but I'm also sort of see this issue echoing in our spaces that we have, the educational settings. And I think, Branko, I don't know if you would agree or not, this is one of the consideration that I always keep in my mind. Would be young people able to carry with the whole session that we're organizing, and will methodology be engaging enough, to keep their focus throughout? And so it's quite interesting, how it can also manifest in many different spaces that we work.
Yeah, and if I can just share what happened on this training, because we have this team of participants from Bulgaria who were actually on a couple of our trainings before, and especially they were on this Joyful Leadership in Hungary training, which had like the most intensive educational program we designed yet. And then in Zadar, they were asking me, why do we have so many breaks? Because, when we talked about to create space for them, that it's not 3 hours in a row that we have, because the participants, as we move on, we get more and more this attention challenge. Yeah, attention deficit challenge that we need to count on and design it in our agenda. Yeah.
Krzysztof, talking about youth engagement, I would also like to hear your voice on this, because you've been working both on like very hands-on parts of the project, designing them, conceptualizing, but also engaged in research projects connected to youth work. And my question would be to you, what does sustainable youth engagement mean in your region, and also in the projects that you design?
Youth engagement in my area means creating conditions where young people are not only invited to participate in project, but involved in shaping them. It is about building just long-term relationships rather than one-time activities. I think ensuring that young people see real impact from their involvement. It also means continuity, designing programs that are not only dependent solely on short-term funding cycles, but are embedded in local structures, partnerships, and research. And I think that
Thank you so much for this. I think also when we were thinking about this, engagement and also involvement of young people into projects, we're also thinking how it can be sustainable is actually to empower young people to engage other young people, which then also multiplies the effect. But yes, again, it's a topic for itself. It's a lot of things that we can communicate about it and a lot of decisions that we can make in this direction. Talking about communication and decision making, we have a last question for both of you, and it's connected with how do communication and decision making influence sustainability in your work?
Because I think particularly, Chris, you shared at the very beginning, this exercise about communication, how it also affects leadership.
I think that in the training in the other, I also realized that what I have in mind before training, that in these times we have a large problem of communication. Like I said, the social media is taking the attention from talking between each other, and the communication, taking care of communication in real life is a large problem right now. And I am something like, I have a confirmation after the training. I have confirmation that my vision of problem with the communication is a real thing, and I think I want to in my work and in my real life after my work, taking care of the communication, to improve the communication, because many problems in our lives and in our work based on not talking to each other. And first is communication, and decision making is easier when we communicate between each other.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for linking at the very end what you said, like you cannot probably really do effective decision making without being good at communicating. Right. So thank you, Radek. Yeah. Chris, what about you?
and frankly speaking, communication, and decision making are the foundation of this sustainable work. One open and transparent communication builds the trust in the team, help addresses challenges early, and prevents misunderstandings. This is most important thing, that we need transparent communication, because when you have projects and challenges without communication, we are lost, and without communication, we can't make good decisions. And I think from me that's it.
When somebody says transparent communication, I always remember this phrase: we are communicating in gloves, which means it's not transparent. Like it's, so for me, transparent always kind of it's a synonym for like, well, let's be direct. It doesn't have to be like very mean or harsh, but just let's be direct, because it's, for us to understand what's the topic, just share the understanding of what we are doing. It needs to be like transparent, it needs to be very clear, understandable, and honest. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much to two of you for sharing. Chris and Radek, for our listeners, we're now using the short forms of our forms of the names of our guests, so you don't get confused. So Krzysztof and Radosław are still here on this podcast with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to two of you for being part of this conversation and for sharing. I think it was our first episode where we had two cultural workers. So it's also, thank you so much for enriching our space of actually youth work, and also our understanding of how different levels and also dimensions of youth work exist, and to the projects that we carry on in this space. And to our listeners, stay with us as we continue this series of Desiderius Ripple, where we explore how learning spaces turn into lasting change.